Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. So do you want to know what can cause some real weirdness in the Hot 100? Not just one big debut, that'll have a ripple effect, but if you want to cause absolute chaos, drop two, and keep them within a few weeks of each other. And you might call me crazy for saying, well, that rarely ever happens. And yet, this is the week where J. Cole followed in the Weeknd's wake with every single song from For Your Eyes Only hitting the Hot 100. I swear, why do we even bother to review albums when this nonsense happens? This was the equivalent to a knockout punch for a lot of music, leading to what I think might be the most number of losses I have ever seen on the Hot 100 and 16 new songs. Because, no, the stream of new arrivals wasn't really stopping either. And note when I say impact, I'm not saying that any of this was remotely good. Folks who saw that J. Cole review remember that I wasn't exactly fond of that album, but then again, we are also featuring songs from The Voice and Post Malone, so okay, what do we get in contrast? Because here's the thing, a lot of people won't realize this. While The Weeknd's big debut hit roughly in the middle of the Hot 100, J. Cole's hit a lot higher. I'm talking about 9 entries in the top 30 and 1 impacting the top 10. And it wasn't even the biggest new arrival. Of course, they didn't quite disrupt the top. Black Beatles by Ray Sherman and Gucci Mane still have #1 thanks to some airplay traction and still ruling streaming, although it did get elbowed off the top in sales. We'll come back to this. Then there's Starboy by The Weeknd, which did not seem to catch a break again, as it was pretty much stranded at #2 and got pushed back in pretty much every category except YouTube, dashing any hopes that I might have that this would hit #1. Then there's Closer by the Chainsmokers and Halsey, which spent the week losing in all categories, although not fast enough for my liking. In contrast, we got 24 Karat Magic by Bruno Mars holding on to #4. Yeah, it got creamed in streaming like everyone who wasn't J. Cole, and it didn't have a great week on airplay, but thanks to Carpool Karaoke with James Corden, its YouTube rebounded along with its sales. Not really sustainable in the long term, but yeah, that was promising. Then there's Side to Side by Ariana Grande and Nicki Minaj at #5. It looked like it peaked in airplay this week, and if it wasn't for consistent YouTube, it would have lost a lot harder. And yet, this takes us to our big debut this week, I Don't Want to Live Forever by Zayn and Taylor Swift from 50 Shades Darker. Now, I'll be getting into this track a lot more later in this video, but apparently the long-awaited return of Taylor Swift was enough to shove this into the top of the sales charts and launch a major radio push that has absolutely no streaming. Contrast this with our second top 10 debut at #7, Deja Vu by J. Cole. Absolutely massive streaming, topping on demand, and yep, his sales are not strong and his airplay is non-existent, so I don't really see this getting much higher. What it did do was disrupt. Juju on That Beat by Zan McCall and Zay Hilfiger got shoved back to #8 as its streaming can't hold up. Let Me Love You by DJ Snake and Justin Bieber got muscled back to #9. Even despite a minor sales and YouTube revival, it got killed on streaming and its airplay is really wavering. And finally, #10, we have Don't Wanna Know by Maroon 5 and Kendrick Lamar. Forced back hard despite holding the top spot in airplay, it had a complete collapse just everywhere else. Good. And on the topic of complete collapses are losers and dropouts. Now, if you want to look where J. Cole's high number of debuts did a lot of damage, it was here. And the dropouts are no small potatoes either. Sure, you had songs like Middle of a Memory by Cole Swindle that were shrinking anyways, but when you force off Timmy Turner by Designer, This Is What You Came For by Rihanna and Calvin Harris, Needed Me by Rihanna, Ride by 21 Pilots, and One Dance by Drake featuring Kyla and Wizkid, that's kind of alarming to say the least. And that's where we get to our losses. And let's start off with the easy ones, The Weeknd leftovers. Die For You dropped to 93, Sidewalks with Kendrick Lamar slipped down to 82, 6 Feet Under with Future went down to 81, Reminder went to 78, and Party Monster dropped hard to 53. Then there were all the returning entries last week that got hit hard, like Million Reasons by Lady Gaga to 62, and Play That Song by Train to 87, and Redbone by Childish Gambino to 75. Not even Christmas songs were spared here, as Jingle Bell Rock by Bobby Helms fell to 46, and Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree by Brenda Lee was chopped down to 48. And from there, the carnage just spread, especially to some of the leftover hits of 2016. Cheap Thrills by Sia and Sean Paul fell down to 41. Unsteady by Ex-Ambassadors skidded down to 42. Treat You Better by Shawn Mendes dropped to 32. Good. The Greatest by Sia and Kendrick Lamar hits 28. Even better. In the Name of Love by Martin Garrix and Bebe Rexha falls down to 35. Cold Water by Major Lazer, Justin Bieber, and Mia is doused down to 40. And Don't Let Me Down by the Chainsmokers Chainsmokers featuring Dea is hit to 43. And then there's Country, which, yes, with losses to May We All by Florida Georgia Line and Tim McGraw dropped to 56, and Song for Another Time by Old Dominion dropping to 69, and Sleep Without You by Brett Young continuing down to 86, but Country was kind of insulated from larger impact simply because it doesn't have the same visibility on streaming. Where things got a lot worse was in hip-hop. Ooh by Young Ma falling down to 47, Chill Bill by Rob Stone, Jay Davis, and Spooks to 49, Do You Mind by DJ Khaled and his posse denied a bona fide hit down to 60, Used to This by Future and Drake at 64, Too Much Sauce by DJ Esco, Future, and Lil Uzi Vert dropping to 74, and Pick Up the Phone by Young Thug, Travis Scott, and Quavo hit hard to 76. And we're still not done here, because this leaves the slightly newer songs that saw whatever momentum they had left kneecapped, like Love Me Now by John Legend off of a big gain last week slashed back to 37, or Fresh Eyes by Andy Grammer, which might have had some traction initially if it wasn't pushed down this week to 88. So okay, what survived any of this? What still maintained any sort of momentum? Well, the short answer is very little, with the 2 returning entries getting artificial boosts. How Far I'll Go by Alessia Cara up to 94 thanks to Moana, and Deja Vu by Post Malone and Justin Bieber back at 77 thanks to his album dropping to the indifference of everyone with a brainstem. And the 2 gains? Well, one was for Rockabye by Clean Bandit with Sean Paul and Anne-Marie up to 90. It's a European smash that I don't really expect will get a ton of traction. I've seen this pattern before. And False Prophets by J. Cole up to 54. We'll come back to J. Cole in a little bit here. Because let's make this abundantly clear, folks. While J. Cole's tidal wave may have caused the most havoc on the Hot 100, it's easily the biggest story. He's one of 5 notable stories in the Hot 100 this week, and that means I've got my work cut out for me with a long week ahead, starting with number 89, At Last by Sundance Head.
My love has come along. My lonely days are over, and life is like a song.
Oh, I should have known this was coming. Not just that Blake Shelton's team would win The Voice, he's been one of the few consistent things about that dying show, but that we'd get an artist like Sundance Head coming off of it. Now, if that name rings a bell at all, he's the son of a mostly forgotten blue-eyed soul and later country artist Roy Head, and you'd probably recognize that he was once back on American Idol way back in season 6 when Jordan Sparks went on to win, and he got eliminated in the top 16. But this year, he got to the top under the country umbrella by following in his father's footsteps. Hell, on the finale, the one song that didn't chart was his cover of Roy Head's biggest hit, Treat Her Right, with Blake Shelton on backup. And here's his cover of Etta James's soul classic, At Last. Okay, let's make this clear. At Last is one of those songs you just should not do. It's James's signature song, it holds up ridiculously well, and while some would note that even though Etta James's version is in fact a cover of an earlier version, it's widely eclipsed the mostly forgotten soundtrack ballad from the 40s that was the original, which can happen with songs of that era. So okay, why does Sundance Head's version somehow sound even more dated with a full edition of doo-wop vocals with twinkling effects and melodies and the guitar and pedal steel that never properly resolve? It's a mishmash of modern country tones and production, doo-wop, and Sundance Head trying to give this song as much soul as he can, and nope. Don't buy it for a second, not at all. Chris Stapleton, this guy is not. And I can't be the only one who finds this version so sterile, soulless, and painfully white bread. Neither modern country or soul needs this. It's really quite bad. Skip it. Number 83, Congratulations by Post Malone featuring Quavo.
Work so hard, forgot how to vacation. They ain't never had the dedication. People hating, say we changing, look, we made it. Yeah, we made it.
And speaking of something that nobody needed, did we really need Post Malone to release his long-delayed debut album that I don't even think the people who liked White Iverson wanted? And coming from somebody who absolutely loathed that song, believe me, stay tuned for a week or so, I've got my piece ready to go for that one. Now we get this, reportedly the best song off of Stoney, according to some critics, and no, this is mediocre at best. A huge part of this is Post Malone himself. His auto-tune drone has no intensity or potency, and you'd think that you would want want that on a song all about writing a victory lap for yourself. And so we get lines like, how could I make sense when I have millions on my mind? Yes, I get the pun, but do you realize you just kind of played yourself with that line, right? He brags about working so hard he forgets about vacation and sounding dramatic and doesn't sound anything close, although he's got no help from the production here, which goes to these blocky warbles of synth crib from Travis Scott that tries to build into this empty soundscape off of a sparse trap beat. Doesn't really do much for me. And then Quavo drops an interchangeable triplet flow verse, and I'm left wondering, who the hell wants this? Look, if this is your go-to chill music, it's a less offensive atrocity than White Iverson, I'll give him that. But this song has the feel of an annoying gust of wind full of dust and sand that hits you right in the face when you don't expect it. It's irritating in the moment, but ultimately forgotten in the long run. Next, number 67, Darlin' Don't Go by Sundance Head.
Leave me all by myself. I don't think I can make it without you.
Okay, round 2 with Sundance Head, with this being his big original song, and even that's misleading because it was originally cut from his album Soul Country that he dropped last year, along with other album cuts like X's Hall of Fame, Fat Guy, and Coon Ass. Oh my god. Granted, this song actually has a bit of a budget now, can afford some richer instrumentation. That, of course, feels utterly sanitized because this is the voice, and actually grit and texture seems to be banned by law, even despite trying to smuggle in some fuzzier guitar into the background, which just sounds flat and awful. And look, I'm not especially fond of Sundance Head's voice, if you can't tell. He's got pipes, but I'm not buying any of his stabs at soul, mostly because of a complete lack of subtlety, and you can make the same argument about this composition too. Multiple key changes, this jittery guitar solo that does not pay off, gospel vocals competing with the guitar, the pedal steel, the organ. It's a tonal mess, and it's not helped by lyrics that alternate between being bland and histrionic and lines that just make no sense, like, my heart is on the floor when I walk in circles over you. I don't know what kind of emotion he's trying to extract out of this, but it does nothing to help him out of this mess. Look, I like country. I like soul music. I don't like this at all. Skip it. Number 57, Everybody Dies by J. Cole.
Not herpes infested, just perfectly blessed with a style that you can't F with. Protection recommended, cause code a definition of a weapon that can end it. You know, mass destruction when I mash the button. I take your favorite major rapper, left from independent. Crying in the corner, cause I ain't in the sorta. Kinda dissing niggas, I'm borderline addicted to slaughter.
Okay, you're gonna have to follow me on this one, because we're starting off this whole endeavor with a J. Cole song that wasn't even actually on For Your Eyes Only. This is actually packaged along with False Prophets as more direct assault on anyone that J. Cole thinks that he can take apart in the mainstream scene. And sure, I kinda dig the production with the thicker beat and the layered guitar tones in the background, but at this point, I'm just heartily sick of J. Cole thinking that he's at the top of the rap game, when A, he's not actually naming names, B, his version of a diss is effectively a list of types of rappers that he doesn't like, and C, I'd actually easily dump him in one of his own categories as the fake deep rappers, having listened to For Your Eyes Only. You want to have issues with Pitchfork? I've got a screed 1.5 miles long because of my issues of that site, but you being bitter because they've seen through your charade, that's one of the few things they've actually gotten right in the past decade, especially when we look at their top 10 list this year. You can see Chance the Rapper, A Tribe Called Quest, yeah, of course that Kanye's on there, it's still Pitchfork after all, but the accusation of being anointed by a race by these rappers gets a hell of a lot thinner when your top 3 entries are Beyonce, Frank Ocean, and Solange at number 1. If you're gonna claim you're at the top of your game, maybe try not to rhyme rapper with itself 12 times. Screw this. Number 52, Just Hold On by Steve Aoki and Louis Tomlinson.
The world it turns no matter what. If it all goes wrong, darling, just
Okay, so here's the thing about solo entries from One Direction. When I've reviewed their albums, I've always read through the liner notes, and I actually took note of the members who actually had writing credits. And by far the member with the most of them was Louis Tomlinson, who teamed up with producer Steve Aoki to push this as his first solo hit, getting an added boost from the X Factor finale to land on the Hot 100. Now, Aoki's brand of EDM tends to be a little bit brighter and sharper than most, but I've always tended to find his mix balance a little shallow. And yeah, that's definitely true here, from the synth tones to the compressed layers around Louis' vocals, which are already higher and thinner than most of the rest of the group. He didn't need that. Yeah, there's a decent lower groove in the synths and the percussion, but that whirring squeal that comprises the drop isn't really doing a lot for me, and I can't exactly say this flatters the subject matter either. Reportedly, he wrote this about his mother's struggles with leukemia, and then she sadly passed away, which can't help but render the song a little bit bittersweet. Even if I do think that tonally it's a bit of a jarring fit, it can't really help but feel unspecific. Still, for EDM in this mold, it's not bad. He sells it okay. I guess I can take this, I guess. Check it out. Number 34, She's Mine Part 2 by J. Cole.
Catch me, don't you catch me. I've fallen in love for the first time. For you, I dropped the tough guy shit. On this bus, I sit thinking about you, thinking about you, thinking about you, thinking about you.
And now we're into the J. Cole album properly, and starting off with one of the better songs. A bass-touch piano and organ ballad with some ragged strings where J. Cole, or his drug dealer friend, it's intentionally not clear here, they face their newborn children who squeal throughout the entire song, and the fatalism shifts throughout the album, now having a very real reason to live going forward, when previously there was a certain element of fatalism. He thought he was gonna die. Of course, surrounding it are some very low-key bars that features J. Cole changing a diaper and musing on the commercialization of Christmas and Black Friday, and out of nowhere aside that doesn't work in context with the rest of the album. But putting that aside and J. Cole's mumbled singing, which has never really impressed me, there is a fragile emotional core to this song that I can actually appreciate. In other words, yeah, I don't mind it. Good song. Number 30, Folding Clothes by J. Cole.
Baby, I wanna do the right thing. Feel so much better than the wrong thing. I say I wanna fold clothes for you. I wanna make you feel good. Baby, I wanna do the right thing. Feel so much better than the wrong thing. I wanna fold clothes for you.
Okay, we move on from one of the better songs to one of the worst, where against this blocky, compressed bass, the choppy guitar that doesn't fit in these thicker backing vocals will actually sound okay, J. Cole brings all of his intensity to a song about folding clothes, watching Netflix, and drinking almond milk, which he rhymes with itself, with his girl. And look, I get the intentions here, with J. Cole trying to capture a moment of euphoria when the hood doesn't exactly allow black men in his position to openly express this sort of happiness. His last verse, it kind of gets close to capturing how weird that can feel. But between the bad singing on the bridge and the misplaced energy, and how the hook always resolves on minor chords, and how unbelievably corny some of these bars are, I'm sorry, I can't get behind this. Next, number 29, For Your Eyes Only by J. Cole.
For your eyes, do you understand me? For your eyes, do you understand? For your eyes, do you understand me? For your eyes, do you understand? For your eyes, do you understand me? For your eyes, do you understand? For your eyes.
We now come to another legitimately solid song on this album, featuring some of J. Cole's most consistent rapping and verses against a firm bass, jazz-inspired horns, piano on the hook, and a guitar and strings that kind of ebb in and out and actually sound pretty good. But again, this is the thesis statement of the album. For the first 3 verses, J. Cole speaks from his drug dealer friend's perspective as a final message to his daughter before his impending death. And the final and longest verse coming from J. Cole's perspective, giving his point of view to pass this along, making a message to all daughters who have lost their fathers. And honestly, his verse isn't really needed here to drive home the point, especially coming off the rest of the album, which makes the themes pretty clear, especially coming off that ridiculous sneezing pun on the 3rd verse. But you know what? I do appreciate J. Cole stating that his friend's legacy is in fact secure, not because he was hard, but because he loved his daughter, and that ultimately matters more. The song definitely runs long, but again, I don't mind this. It's a solid song. I'll take it. Number 24, Ville Mentality by J. Cole.
alone cannot survive with this mentality.
And now we're back to J. Cole crooning over a wiry bass line, sparse piano, strings, and J. Cole's complaining in the more money, more problems vein, and musing about a retirement that really, it's never gonna happen, and interjecting it with snippets of a child running away when her mom scolds her as she thinks back about her father who passed away. So okay, is the parallel that he's drawing here ironic to castigate running away from one's problems as childish, or sincere like everything else on this album? Really, it's impossible to tell because the song is so painfully underwritten that I really can't get behind it. I'm sorry. Next, number 23, For Whom the Bell Tolls by J. Cole.
I see the rain pouring down before my very eyes. Should come as no surprise. I see the rain pouring down.
Okay, I'll give this song some credit for the ominous vibe. The sleigh bells, the clicking beat, the squealing horns, and then we have J. Cole singing in a voice that sounds just as fried as mine does right now about seeing something dark coming, probably his own death. Okay, it's not a bad way to set the mood for the album and highlight the suicidal themes that'll run through the record. But between the atmosphere not quite getting there for me and J. Cole's vocals, it's not bad, but definitely not great either, if I'm being honest. Number 22, She's Mine Part 1 by J. Cole.
Catch me, don't you catch me. I'm falling in love for the first time. I wanna cry, and I ain't even trying to fight it. Don't wanna die.
Okay, I'm a little bit conflicted about this song. On the one hand, it's got the same sort of drippy delivery and instrumental that I wasn't really fond of on part 2, but I did think that the bars are a tad more cohesive and expressing a lot of J. Cole's vulnerability. So why in the nine hells, in the second line on his one verse, he's describing his girl as plus the head game is stronger than a few Excedrin? You see what all I mean about how self-serving this can be? Even when he's trying to be at his most vulnerable and honest, he's bragging about blowjobs? Okay, other than that, I still think that part 2 is a more developed song, so it's getting the plus here. Not this. Number 21, Change by J. Cole.
But the only real change come from inside. But the only real change come from inside. But the only real change come from the cemeteries on chains. I see men cry. But the only real change come from inside. But the only real change come from inside. But the only real change come from.
And here we have one of the most controversial songs on the album. One that I was initially on to like, courtesy of the glitchy tones forming the scratchy melody and the rougher beat, and Ari Lennox's welcome backing support and the singing. But then we have to get into J. Cole's content, and again, I'm left frustrated. I can appreciate making peace with death, as J. Cole drops another huge clue surrounding the album's narrative arc and showing how toxic the violence in the hood can be, especially when it's glamorized and called real to enforce black masculinity, especially when he discovers that he can use his own bars and content to get free of it all. But then we get that first verse, where he asserts that God understands the plight of these men and should give them consolation, whether they shoot somebody out of ignorance or because they're bitter in pain, they beat their wives. No mention of asking for forgiveness or showing any sort of genuine remorse, just J. Cole's version of a plenary indulgence to excuse spousal abuse. It's disgusting and a toxic line on an otherwise good song. I'd skip it. Next, number 13, Neighbors by J. Cole.
Neighbors think I'm selling dope. I guess the neighbors think I'm selling dope. Selling dope, selling dope, selling dope, selling dope.
Motherfucker.
Now here we actually get another good song. Probably one of the best off of For Your Eyes Only, off of the title track. It takes the same sort of fragmented, choppy melody against a rougher beat and a stronger hook as J. Cole tells the true story of the police raid on his house in North Carolina because his rich white neighbors thought he was dealing out of it. It's a potent story. It ties the narrative together. It gives weight to J. Cole's real frustrations with a prejudiced system, showing how it can still impact his life even despite his own fame and success. There's honestly not a lot to really complain about this. I don't don't love the punchline on the hook where he's not selling dope, but dope rhymes. Ugh. And that line how he'd screw the fame and not the fortune, which kind of puts a lot of that anti-capitalist rant he goes on in Your Mind Part 2, but that's minor all things considered. As it is, despite how much I've gone off on J. Cole here, this is a good song. I'll take it. Number 11, Immortal by J. Cole.
1745, form at the plot, real niggas don't die. Form on the plot, girl, niggas don't lie. Form in the plot, my niggas don't die. Form on the plot, real niggas don't die. Form on the plot, real niggas don't die. Real niggas don't die.
You know, it's very telling the highest J. Cole debuts came from songs that sound the most like Drake, with the off-tune warbling of the melody and the sparse trap beat driving the sharper flow that leads into the hook. And look, there are elements I like about this. The fatalism, the depression, the unease that comes when there's actually a drought in the trap with limited to no drugs to actually sell, the commentary in the outro that comes in the few ways that black men are told to get out of the trap either through the NBA, dealing, or rapping, and yet, very telling again that J. Cole actually did the latter here. Sure, I get that this song is supposed to be from his friend's perspective, and that the fatalism that comes from dying young to have a legend or living long but unfulfilled, that J. Cole's trying some way to satirize this or make commentary on it, but why do I get the feeling that with this tone and with this delivery that the message is not going to come through properly at all, especially given a lot of his bragging on his second verse about his girl with a fat ass. Ugh, look, this is not bad, but again, J. Cole, he is actually capable of better. We've heard it before. Number 7, Deja Vu by J. Cole.
Put your motherfucking hood up. It's the weekend. Drop that ass up and bitches get the freaking. Last call at the bar, ladies get a drink, nigga get some balls. Ain't no telling you gon' see that bitch tomorrow. Stop holding up the wall, waiting for the right song. Better holler, cause you know they about to cut the lights on. And put my number.
And I shouldn't even be surprised that this is the big J. Cole song that took him to the top, no matter how awful it is. Probably the worst song from the album. Let me start by saying that I don't care about the producer feud surrounding who stole the beat from who, which is why Bryson Tiller had this same sample to market first with Exchange. I'm not really so fond of this sample or production here anyway that I care all that much. Once again, my larger issue is with the content, where J. Cole steps into the shoes and flows of Drake, with his first verse playing his love at first sight for this girl with complete sincerity, despite the fact that, of course, she's got a boyfriend, and the second verse, after the DJ shouts driving the hook for guys to hook up at the end of the night, and the second verse, J. Cole's wondering how this guy could really let her out of the house and for her to put her number into his phone regardless. And yet, on the final bridge, he says that despite this girl being made for him, he doesn't want her to wait around and he can't make any promises to her. So is this love at first sight, J. Cole, or what? Or are you just being the disingenuous liar that you've been hiding beneath the surface your entire damn career? At least Bryson Tiller can admit when he's an asshole, but J. Cole is too much of a freaking coward to honestly frame his douchebaggery, because he's such a nice guy after all. Again, screw this song. Next. And finally, I Don't Want to Live Forever by Zayn and Taylor Swift at number 6.
Just wanna keep calling your name until you come back home. I just wanna keep calling your name until you come back home.
You know, it's been a rough week if I'm stuck hoping that a collaboration between an underperforming boy band member and a dangerously overexposed celebrity with a tarnished reputation teaming up for a 50 Shades Darker theme song might actually bring some quality to the charts. And yet, to be fair here, I had hopes this could work. If Taylor Swift wanted to pivot towards darker, more sexual material, this would be the way to do it. And both artists desperately need some teeth to their material going forward. So this... I don't know if what I was expecting, but I can't exactly say I'm impressed by this. If you were expecting any sort of kinkiness or sexiness to this song, you're definitely going to end up disappointed. Because if anything, it's a song where Zayn and Taylor Swift pine over each other in the aftermath of a relationship that Taylor Swift ended. Okay, first things first. If this song is trying to equate Anna from 50 Shades with Taylor Swift, who has been comfortable in that role of dominant for years now, I'm sorry, it doesn't add up. Not helped by Zayn spending the majority of the track in his admittedly strong falsetto range. Lyrically, really, again, they're working off the seriously messed up understanding of BDSM from 50 Shades, but really, you could easily just view this song as just another love-hate relationship where neither side was giving the other what they wanted, so they broke up, and now they still want each other. It's just lacking any sort of distinctive detail there. And just like so much of the rest of the music associated with this god-awful book series, the production just isn't all that sexy or even sensual. A rattling lo-fi beat, fuzzy scratches, gurgling synths, and a burst into a faint twinkle of piano against trap snares. The groove of it all is painfully underweight. It's lacking any sense of subtlety. I mean, I like Jack Antonoff's production work a lot. I'm looking forward to the next Bleachers album, but this, it seems out of his wheelhouse, if I'm being honest. Overall, the leads, they aren't bad here. They're both good singers. They have some decent chemistry, but it really doesn't add up to much. Less than the sum of its parts, and overall, kind of forgettable. Sorry. But that was this week. And wow, a lot of this sucked. For the best, as much as I don't want to give it to J. Cole, For Your Eyes Only really is the best song here, with Neighbors clinching the honorable mention. But he's also getting the worst with Deja Vu, with dishonorable mention going to the epic butchering of Etta James's classic At Last by Sundance Head. Let's pray that all this takes a considerable loss in for next week. The last thing that I want is for J. Cole's mediocrity to stick around. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I will see you next time.